So, welcome to a brand new deep dive. And today's mission is, well, where I'm tackling a really fascinating question.
Right.
Is doing the right thing just, a nice PR slogan, like something you slap on a billboard? Or is it actually a hard, undeniable requirement for a company's financial survival?
It's a huge question.
It really is. And we're going to explore this using a report from 2010. It's from CIMA, which is the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. And it's titled Incorporating Ethics into Strategy, Developing Sustainable Business Models.
Yeah, and to kind of set the stage for this, the report includes this really striking visual right near the beginning. It's a black and white photograph, and it's looking straight up, or maybe straight down, it's kind of hard to tell, the center of a spiral staircase.
Oh, yeah. It's super disorienting when you first look at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It perfectly captures what we're talking about today because corporate ethics, it isn't just this flat checklist.
Right.
It's a structural spiral.
Yeah. I like to think of it as like the staircase analogy. It's the structural rebar, right? Like corporate ethics isn't just a fresh coat of paint. If the foundational steps are rotten, the whole climb just completely collapses.
Yeah.
Decisions cascade down from that top step all the way to the bottom. And, for you listening right now, whether you're an investor or a manager or honestly just a consumer who's totally tired of corporate scandals, understanding the actual financial mechanics of this is going to completely change how you view the brands you interact with every day.
Completely. And to understand why companies desperately need to build that ethical staircase, we first kind of have to look at what happens when they don't, when they only focus on the step directly in front of them.
Right, the short-termism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The report looks at the 28 companies that fell out of the S&P 500 in the preceding decade. And what's wild is that very few of them were just victims of, normal market shifts.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Most of them fell due to massive fraud. Your Enrons, your WorldComs. Or they had these deeply unsustainable short-term business models.
Right, like Lehman Brothers.
Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, Wachovia, and Marconi over in the UK. They just chased these huge immediate gains and ignored the long-term reality.
Which is, it's totally different from how things used to be, right? Like the famous Ford Pinto case in the 1970s.
That's a classic example.
Where they literally calculated that paying damages to victims of fuel tank fires would just be, cheaper than actually recalling the cars. But the report notes that modern corporate culture largely rejects that kind of purely financial math now, because reputation is just too valuable.
It is, and it ties into this economic concept of externalities,
Okay.
which are basically the negative effects of economic activity that traditional accounting just ignores, like resource depletion or pollution.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because it's really easy to look back at Enron or Lehman Brothers and just blame, bad people doing bad things.
Right.
But the report points out that current compensation structures, especially in places like investment banking, they almost force this greed. So isn't the system itself rigged to reward short-termism?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you've hit on the exact core problem. There is this massive clash between moral imperatives and the equity markets.
Because shareholders want their money now?
Exactly. Shareholders demand quick returns, and that forces CEOs into making short-term decisions just to keep the stock price up. But the report argues that a tough CEO's actual duty is to resist that pressure.
Even if it hurts them today.
Even if it means delivering, more realistic, lower financial results in the short term, you have to build for the long term.
Man, that's got to be a tough sell to a room full of angry investors.
Oh, it's incredibly difficult, which is why so many companies try to fake it.
Right, which brings us to greenwashing. If the market demands short-term profits, but survival requires long-term ethics, companies are caught in the middle, so they just put on a fresh coat of paint.
Yeah, and public awareness is growing. People are highly critical of companies causing social or environmental harm now. We have a much wider circle of concern.
So companies pivot to greenwash. Just opportunistic, skin-deep marketing to gullible consumers.
Yes, but the report does highlight that it's not always black and white. Ethics are often highly debatable. There are all these gray areas.
Like what?
Well, are nuclear plants bad and wind turbines good?
Right, because of the supply chain for the turbines?
Exactly. Or, here's a tough one. Should an arms business quit a market where bribery is heavy? Or should they stay and just try to behave better than their rivals?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really messy.
It is. But some companies are genuinely trying to embed ethics or at least align with ethical brands. Like, look at Toyota's Prius. They did pioneering work there.
But because they claim that ethical high ground, aren't they judged way more heavily on stuff like vehicle recalls?
100%. The spotlight is harsher.
Hmm.
You also have Coca-Cola taking a minority stake in Innocent Drinks.
The smoothie company.
Yeah, and Innocent gives away 10% of its profits to charity. So Coke absorbs some of that halo.
Interesting.
Then there's McDonald's investing heavily in environmental awareness to rebuild their brand, and Marks and Spencer doing their huge Plan A sustainability initiative.
You know, it sounds like the difference between eating a salad once a week and actually changing your entire lifestyle.
That's a great way to put it.
Like if it's just bolted on the weekly salad, it's greenwashing. But how do we know, practically speaking, when a company has actually changed its corporate lifestyle?
Well, the report's core thesis is that ethics must be embedded in the actual business model and strategy, not just treated as an afterthought, and that requires the tone from the top.
Meaning the CEO.
Right. Once the CEO gets the ethics bug, they have to back up their policy with clear action. They have to prove to middle managers that taking an ethical stance is actually going to be rewarded, not penalized.
Right. Because if my bonus depends on hitting a target, I'm going to hit the target, ethics be damned.
Exactly. The incentives have to change.
Okay, to see what this embedded ethics really looks like in practice, we need to look at 3 very different companies from the report that face these major ethical crossroads.
Yes, these case studies are fascinating.
Let's start with Westpac Bank in Australia. So they were getting heavily criticized by activists for closing rural branches and hiking up fees. And normal PR just completely failed to fix it.
Right. So the board had to actually refocus on sustainability and stakeholder engagement.
And what happened?
Well, the result was they became the first Australian bank to produce annual reports conforming to the Global Reporting Initiative. They essentially turned corporate responsibility from a cost center into a major value generator.
That's incredible. Okay, what about the second one? De Beers.
De Beers. Operating in the diamond trade, which is obviously fraught with ethical issues, they were facing the horrors of conflict diamonds.
Right, gems funding war, child soldiers, just awful stuff.
Horrific. So De Beers chose to strongly oppose these practices. They didn't just put out a press release, they participated heavily in the Kimberley process.
The certification thing.
Exactly. To ensure over 99% of global rough diamonds are certified conflict-free.
Yeah.
And they enforced strict anti-bribery rules across their operations.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The third case study is the Cooperative Bank in the UK. The report calls them the accidental ethical bank.
I love this story.
It's so good. So in 1992, they surveyed their customers and realized people banked with them specifically because they avoided apartheid South Africa.
Right. They had no formal ethical policy before that.
None. But they realized, oh, wait, this is our brand. So they formalized it. And they started actively rejecting business. They turned down £1 billion worth of business from the arms trade, fossil fuels, animal testing.
£1 billion?
Yes, which in any normal boardroom, that sounds like absolute corporate suicide, turning down £1 billion.
Right.
Yet they grew 14% a year. Their commercial lending went from £571 million to £4.4 billion by 2008. They thrived straight through the global banking crisis.
It's amazing.
So does this essentially prove that doing the right thing is actually a massive competitive advantage?
What's fascinating here is that, yes, it totally proves the win-win scenario. Integrating ethics, it isn't charity. It protects a company's license to operate. It secures their supply chain. It attracts top talent. And it builds this unshakable brand trust that survives even severe financial crises.
Because the customers are wildly loyal.
Exactly. But this raises an important question. If ethics is the key to long-term financial survival, how do organizations actually measure it? You can't manage what you don't measure.
Right, you need metrics.
Which brings us to the unlikely heroes of this story. The report names management accountants as the ethical spine of organizations.
Okay, wait. Accountants.
Yes, accountants.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Because we usually think of accountants as just impartial number crunchers in a back room somewhere. But this report is basically casting them as the ethical guardians of the corporate world.
Because they are bound by strict professional codes. They act as a bulwark against practices like bribery.
But wait, can an accountant really force a CEO to care about greenhouse gases if the CEO is only worried about this quarter's profits?
Well, the problem historically has been the flaw of conventional financial reports. They ignore the depletion of nature's capital, right? Like fossil fuels and greenhouse gases.
Right.
But the solution the report introduces is connected reporting. It was driven by the Prince's Accounting for Sustainability Project, or A4S.
Okay.
This model actually forces companies to link financial data directly with non-financial risks. Things like climate change, resource usage, human rights, employee safety.
So the accountant isn't just saying, here's the profit. They're saying, here's the profit, and here's the massive long-term risk to our supply chain.
Exactly. The report is very clear. Accountants aren't meant to be cheerleaders or activists.
Yeah.
Their true power is their impartiality.
They just bring the cold, hard facts.
Right. Their role is to facilitate the assessment of the long-term view. By collating all this qualitative data and presenting it completely objectively, they force the board to confront unpalatable facts and the true long-term risks of their decisions.
So you can't just hide behind the quarterly spreadsheet anymore.
No, you can't.
Wow. Okay, let's briefly recap this journey we've been on. Because we've gone from the deadly consequences of short-term greed like Enron and Lehman Brothers to this realization that ethics actually has to be a core strategy. It has to be the rebar in the staircase.
Not just greenwashing.
Exactly, not just bolted on. It has to be supported by the top and meticulously measured by management accountants using connected reporting. So doing the right thing isn't just about feeling good. It's ultimately about ensuring the company will literally be around in a decade.
It's survival.
It really is. And this matters to you because the next time you invest in a stock or buy a product or evaluate your own employer, you really need to look past the PR. Ask yourself, are they measuring their success in months or in decades? Have they embedded ethics into their core strategy, or is it just the weekly salad?
Are they building a sturdy staircase?
Exactly. And I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to ponder. Because the CIMA report noted that in 2010, a more connected public was forcing companies to care about their global footprint.
Right, social media and all that.
Yeah. But fast forward to tomorrow, as technologies like AI and blockchain make global supply chains essentially 100% visible and traceable, will the idea of an accidental ethical company just disappear?
Oh, well.
Right. Soon, complete transparency won't just be an option for the quote-unquote good brands. It might become technologically impossible for any brand to hide the unethical steps on their corporate staircase. So keep that in mind, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive.